Hey, how's it going, everybody? Thank you for coming back to another podcast episode. This topic is going to be on a deep dive of Angels of Omnipotence that Mars had promised us on the last podcast episode. And today we have a very interesting and special guest, Jareth Tempest, who is here to kind of share his experience. And like he had a lot of experience and he has actually close communications and experiences working directly with the Angels of Omnipotence. And if you're in the Magick community, you probably know his name. So it's an honor to have him on this podcast, honestly. So appreciate you coming on board. So yeah, what do you got about the Angels of Omnipotence? You want to talk about Elubatel, Ebuhuel, and Atuesuel?
Well, first, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it, and hope that we can enlighten some people on what's going on here in this second working with these Angels of Omnipotence. But so yeah, to jump right in, I've written a book called Angels of Omnipotence, and in doing that book, I did some basic, research into where they come from and kind of their history, and it's kind of rather unusual. Most angels that occultists work with, have a long history that goes back, to the Old Testament or something to that effect. But there's really not a whole lot that's very old with the angels as they appear now. They first appeared in the 6th and 7th book of Moses, which was published in Germany in pamphlets and then kind of compiled, but in the 1800s. And then it really kind of moved into what you might call the folk magic or the conjure communities and hoodoo and an Appalachian folk magic and stuff. And really, I believe that that's where working with Elubatel to get money came from. And because in the 6th and 7th book of Moses, they're not used for attracting wealth or money or anything like that. They're used to conjure Leviathan, and then to when you're finished with Leviathan, to put him back into hell. So that's a big jump from that book to asking them to bring you wealth and money. So that's just an interesting kind of path that these angels have taken.
I wonder what the symbolism is between this conjuration of Leviathan and this story of bringing him up and putting him back. I wonder how the sixth and seventh book of Moses essentially took this idea and ran with it. And it's interesting, of course, but I wonder why this was selected as because essentially it's the foundation, really, of this, would you say?
Yeah, well, okay, so what's interesting here is that when I wrote the book, I didn't really work too hard on trying to figure out the theory behind these angels and where they came from. I kind of just wanted to get an idea of how they've been used over the years and stuff. And it wasn't until very recently, until after the book was published, that another author contacted me, Tristan Whitespire, and he had some ideas that he wanted to run by me, and he really linked the number there. In my book, I list 9, but really in the book of 6th and 7th book of Moses, there's only 8. And what it is there was 8, and then the 9th one is actually kind of all of them together working as one. It's kind of their I don't know if you want to use the Voltron or something like that, where the 8 come together to form one. So there's really 8. So that number 8 was very significant to him, and he was had found it all through Eastern traditions and things like that, and he thought that there was something there. And so we both started digging into this concept, and what I found was an Egyptian, these 8 Egyptian gods. I'm probably not going to pronounce this right, called the Ogdoad, which basically means the eightfold, and they're very primordial deities. And even in the pyramid texts and things where they appear, it doesn't really seem like anyone knows what they do, except that they create infinity. and that they bring things up out of chaos and then can put things back into chaos. So they can bring order out of chaos, and then they can, take order and create chaos, which that brings back to the Leviathan thing, which in the Old Testament and just into the Hebrews and to other peoples in the Near East at the time, the ocean was metaphorical for chaos and for that primordial chaos that everything came out of. In certain versions of the story, Yahweh conquered chaos and created everything out of that primordial chaos, and then eventually everything's he'll reduce things back to that. And that's what Leviathan is a symbol of. Leviathan is an ocean dragon, and is that primordial chaos. And so I think here in the 6th and 7th book of Moses, you have these angels are being shown that they can control chaos, and that they can make something out of nothing, and then they can take something and reduce it back to nothing. And it's just illustrating the awesome power that these angels possess.
Wow.
Does that kind of clarify where I think that it's coming? Now, this is all I want to just, and we do want to say this is all theory.
Yeah.
I'm not saying within 100% that these angels are these ancient Egyptian gods. There's a lot of, I think, room for play and all of that, but I think that you can see a theme that kind of, goes through history with these kind of entities that can that have that kind of power.
I do. And when we were talking about the number 8 originally, I know that 8 has a lot of different definitions in the context of numerology, but when I think of the number 8, I think of infinity, and it's just amazing that this, you went really in that direction. I'm very inclined to believe this perspective. I think it's interesting.
I'm of the personal belief that there's a lot of parallels between a lot of cultures. So the fact that, the theory that you formed makes a lot of sense to me, because the parallels, they kind of match up. And even in numerology, like Mars just mentioned, the number 8 has something to do with money. It's a financial number in general, from what I know anyway. There could be different based on different theories, but I am of Indian Hindu background, so that's kind of where I came from as well. And then we're talking about the Angels of Omnipotence, and we're talking about Leviathan, but I'm not sure about the 6th and 7th book of Moses. You'll probably have to enlighten us, but I do know in Wealth Magic, they don't make any mention of any creature except for Klonic that has anything to do with hell. Like, it's kind of entirely based on the angels, and then even Raziel and something like that. So based on this talisman that they have in Ritual 2, which a lot of it is found in the 6th and 7th book of Moses. What is is there a sigil, or is there some type of emblem or some type of connection to Leviathan in the second working of Wealth Magic?
Not to my knowledge. I need to look at that again, actually. But no, there's nothing there that seems to be Leviathan, and I'm pretty sure that Damon Brand is very clear that I think Clownic is the only official demon. I think that there's a little I think Calvarnia or something like that, or some people might consider, but it's more, I think it's more of a genius spirit personally. But
Yeah.
But no, within the second working, there's nothing demonic or cathartic or anything going on. I think what you have are these entities that were historically very, very powerful, and starting with the 6th and 7th book of Moses, you start, they kind of entered kind of the mainstream of magical use. And people started experimenting with it as magicians tend to do, and people found out pretty quick that they will bring wealth. And I think that that's kind of where they got popular. Was it didn't matter about where they came from. People were just looking at their practical uses, and people always want money, so that's how they became popular.
Yeah, it's
When
crazy. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, well, I was just thinking about how, so the sixth and seventh book of Moses, is it true, or I mean, do we have facts at least to believe that actually that the sixth and seventh book of Moses were actually part of the Bible, or were at one point meant to be uh books in the Bible of the Old Testament?
There's no direct connection between the sixth and seventh book of Moses and um,
Exodus.
anything actually coming, from the Bible or anything like that. What you probably have is a translation of a translation of a translation of an old practical Kabbalah book that the original's been lost, and it's just something that's been kind of cobbled together from maybe different sources or something of some old practical Kabbalah,
Yep. No,
which
because
is
that's
really kind of
exactly
the
what I
source.
think about.
Go ahead.
That's what I was thinking when I think about the sixth and seventh book of Moses. I believe it's a very Kabbalistic um, ritual or perspective, at least, of conducting magic, and the the chronological order of Moses, or at least after Moses, is at some point we get to David, and then we get to Solomon, and there's some literature about how this knowledge was passed down to David and thus into Solomon, and the stories really align a little bit. If we were looking at this strictly from a Kabbalistic perspective, of the same power that um, King Solomon, actually had when he was summoning these entities and putting them to go work on the temple of God. And there's a very interesting text out there. I think everyone should read it. It's called the Testament of King Solomon, and it really goes pretty in depth about a story about how, and it's a first person perspective, so it's as if King Solomon himself wrote it. Um, there isn't any factual evidence to support that he wrote it, but essentially there is definitely a lot of symbolism, and it talks essentially about the rise and the fall of King Solomon. When you are getting to this point of summoning the Angels of Omnipotence in wealth magic, in ritual too, you
Yeah.
are definitely getting to a point where you're playing with some very important forces, and it's very important to know what's going on in the second ritual. So very interesting stuff there, Jareth.
Yeah, you're playing with real power here. Um, this is the real deal. Do you mind if I kind of go off topic here? I mean, not off topic, but just I have a kind of a story I'd like to tell.
Go for it.
Yeah, sure.
When I first started working with these angels, when I did the second working, and just the name, the Angels of Omnipotence, is just so intriguing. You're like, why are they called that? So I started trying to just dig around as best as I could, and there's just not a whole lot of information on them out there. And if you Google Angels of Omnipotence, there's this blog post that comes up, and it just describes a initiation ritual that you can do that involves all 8 of them. And I did the ritual, and I do not recommend anyone do this ritual. It was one of the scariest. It's actually the only magic thing I've ever done that just really scared me to my core. Not because I felt like this was an evil entity or anything like that, but because for the first time I felt like this was real power. This was, you will get what you want regardless of what it takes to get it.
Wow.
Not in that like it's going to just destroy everything or anything like that. I'm trying. I know that that's kind of where people's minds go with magic, but that's not the way magic usually works. But just the simple fact that like you will get what you ask for, and to really, you know, we can conceptualize that, and we can kind of, you know, we have an idea of what that is, and that's what we're kind of striving for as magicians. But to actually face it is a different story. And so yeah, I did that, and I kind of talk about it in the book, and that's when I kind of stopped for a little while, and I was like, okay, this is very special. We're going to kind of put this over here and think about it. And but then of course, obviously, you can't just let that kind of thing go. So that's when I started digging deeper into actually just working with them. And I work through visual magic and path workings and stuff like that. And so I got path workings for them, and I started working with them on an individual level. And I started finding out then kind of what individually they enjoy doing. They use the word service a lot, and they would like, you know, certain angels would say, I enjoy servicing people in this way, and they do very much like working with people. That's a very important thing. They really do like people, and they like working with people, and they like helping people get better and improving their life. You know, when I say that these angels are scary, I don't mean to say that, you know, they're these horrifying monsters or anything like that. Just that, you know, that they are, but they're the real deal, and you need to be thoughtful when you work with them, and know what, you know, be sure that you want what you're asking for.
Yeah, I think honestly, from my theory, the reason that Damon Brand sets the order of working with all the entities in the first place is there specifically to set the framework and having an order for that. So you talking about your experience with those angels of omnipotence, I'm not gonna lie, I'm actually kind of intrigued. But like your basically your warning is very important to heed, because also, you know what, like, but I was thinking about this before when you were talking about how they became into the mainstream around the 1800s. That's only like 220 years, 200 maybe less years of being in the mainstream. So it's been really hidden in the back burner for a lot of magic. So like it's interesting how it's evolved from what it used to be. Who knows what the original history is? Because you said there might be a mistranslation of a translation of a translation of a translation. So we don't know what was lost, but we don't know what was added either. But it's evolved to the point where now in today's day and age, there's a lot better understanding of these spirits to give way more experiences. And I'm kind of jumping on multiple topics here. I'm really excited to talk about this, but I had a friend in like middle school and high school, and he was like hardcore into Islam. He was Pakistani, so that's his culture, but he was like getting really into it. And he was sharing with me how there's angels and jinn in the Islamic culture, and the angels specifically, they live to serve God. And from that perspective, like I hear what you said, Jareth, about the angels loving to help people. And I think like I could draw a parallel in my head that these angels are there to serve God by helping what I mean in Christian terminology they would be God's children, which is people. So it kind of like I see all these parallels and ways that they relate to each other is really neat.
Well, yeah, kind of my core theory of magic and why magic works for us as humans is that we all have divinity within us. We all, at the core of our being, is, you know, is pure divinity. And so you work as a magician through the power and authority of that divinity that is within you. And so when these angels, you know, do what you want them to do, it's not because they respect you as you know, as Mario or whatever. It's because they respect you as you know, they see the divine power and authority within you. And the most important thing any magician can do in their journey, and to become, you know, better and better at magic, is to get in touch with that inner divinity and to learn to work out of that power and authority.
Very well said. So, in essence, with respect to your book, what can someone say, for example, like me, who has done Wild Magic already twice, meaning I've already done, Ritual 2 twice. And, how could I take your book and grow with it and use magic to better my life if I have, just coming from the perspective of an average Joe, right? Who's already worked with the Angels of Omnipotence. In other words, how can your book help my life?
Oh, well, in several ways, actually. So as you kind of mentioned, I started working with them on an individual level and, through the path workings. And in the book, I do include those path workings so that anybody can go and you can work with them all individually in person. But I also, if that is too intense or you're not good at visualizing, there's a system of glyphs that the angels passed on to me, and they're real simple, blocky glyphs, and they each have a kind of a core meaning. Like we have one that represents creation, you have one that represents mother, and one that represents movement and action. And so what I've done then is I took those glyphs and I've put them together into different sigils that have different effects. And then I give the instructions in the book also for how you can use the glyphs yourselves. And so what this does, like I was talking about, doing that ritual from, that I found on a random website online, and how scary that was. I've taken it and you still have access to the same power, but it's through an easier to work with system that anybody who, you don't have to be an experienced magician to be able to work with these angels through these glyphs. And each angel has, like I said, a particular area that they like to work in. And this is something where, some of the purists might not like it very much. Now, you have to remember, every one of these angels is insanely powerful and can do pretty much anything. So I'm not saying that if there's something that they enjoy doing, doesn't mean that they can't do the other stuff too. But like Elubatel, who is the main angel that you work with in the second working, told me that he enjoys helping people to become wise, and that is really his main area that he enjoys working in. And so when you look at my book, all of the powers under Elubatel are going to be for helping you mentally, help sharpen your mind or to increase your memory, or things of that nature, or just to make wise decisions or even wise financial decisions, which that one is in there. And then and then the other angels have different things that they enjoy doing. And this Labusi is actually the one that likes working with money and prosperity and making people prosperous and stuff, and was not even included in the wealth magic working. And I'm not trying to say that Damon Brand made a mistake. This is the way that they've been worked with for
That's interesting.
for a couple of 100 years. So that's just the way and it does work. People have gotten amazing results from working with Elubatel for money.
Why do you think that is?
Well, in the way that the 6th and 7th book of Moses works, you have the first three, the three that appear in the wealth magic working. They're the main ones you work with. And so I believe that's just carried over into the way people worked. And you have to remember that Elubatel didn't appear in even this kind of these magic books in wealth magic originally. He was in the New Avatar Power book by what's his name, Geoff Cobb, something, I can't remember.
Yeah.
But the book that inspired the Gallery of Magic to do these kinds of books in the first place, and it came out in the 70s. And there's a famous ritual from that book that's just Elubatel. and it's like a chant that to Elubatel that you do every day until you get the money that you're wanting. And this is actually where the negative aspects that you hear about from working with Elubatel and the second working start, where these stories start coming from of people's lives being turned upside down, and what Damon Brand calls disruptions. And I believe that a lot of that comes from Elubatel wanting to help make you, to teach you a lesson along with just giving you the money. Because again, I think he, and this is just from my personal experience and talking with this angel, but he does enjoy helping people become wise. And I think that to him, he's giving you what you're asking for, and he's making you a little wiser in the process. And that's what's important to him. So, and as far as like, I do want to go in a little more depth into the disruptions and these stories that people tell, because you hear about it all the time. Anytime anyone brings up the second working, everyone starts talking about the disruptions. And
Yep.
Jason Miller wrote a really good article on his blog site, on a strategic sorcery blog site, about Elubatel and the disruptions. And he was mainly talking about it from the new Avatar Power book and the ritual that's in there. And his take on it is that basically because the people were saying more and more that they felt like Elubatel was telling them that they were unworthy. And the thing is, like, communication with these angels is very layered and it's complex, because like when I first started talking to them, like initially when I asked Elubatel what he does, what he said was that I teach you to talk to animals. And I was like, well, that doesn't make, okay. But then I understood what do you, when I went back and I talked to him again, is like, he can, he helps you to become wise by kind of, you grow, you learn from the life and the beings around you, is what he meant by that. And so a lot of times what you first hear, even as a magician or a psychic or whatever, from communicating with these angels, is not necessarily the real, more in-depth meaning. You have to take things, usually go back and listen to them again and again to get the real core meaning behind it. And so when people are saying that they feel that Elubatel is telling them they're not worthy, Jason Miller says, well, he's not telling you that you're not worthy. It's just that your life is not set up for manifesting wealth or money, because you have to have that means of manifestation. Your life, or I think Gordon White is the one that calls it, your life needs to be enchantable. If you're going to ask for money to flow into your life and to wealth to flow into your life, you need to have a way for that to happen. If you're working an hourly job at McDonald's, and you don't have any investments and you don't have any side hustle, or where you're selling something on the side or something like that, the only more way that more money can come into your life for the most part is more hours, if you work more hours. And sometimes you can't even, even that's not even possible, because you can only work so many hours. And so if you're going into working within that ritual, and you don't have a way for it to happen, and you're not doing anything to make it possible for the magic to happen, that's when Elubatel starts sending a signal that you're not worthy. And it's not that, it's not like you're not morally worthy, it's that you're not doing your part to make it happen. And that's so important with all magic, but it's really important in money magic, that you do your part. You have to go out there and you have to make things happen, or be there ready to receive and be willing to open that door when opportunity knocks. And if you're not, and your life is not set up in that way, and you're not ready for it, then that's when things start getting turned upside down. Because then he's going to be like, like I said, they will give you what you ask for. And so basically that means that you might lose that job, and then you're going to have to, and you might not have any work for a while until that right job shows up for you or something like that. And so that's where, and then you're becoming wise in this process, a little bit wiser by going through this struggle. And this is all the things that I think Elubatel will do. And yeah, so that's why
so deep.
it's so important that you have a life, and that you look at it as not just like, I'm going to wave a magic wand and everything and money's just going to fall in my lap, because it's just not realistic of what magic is and how it works. You've got to do your part.
That's so deep. And wow, I'm truly blessed today to have this conversation with you and talk about these things, because I can't tell you how many times I had goosebumps when you were talking, Jareth. I mean, I really, really resonate with the part about how the bit about being unworthy. And in the past, I've told others, I've described this that you talk about as being aware of your worth. And I have told others that, you know, when you go through the second ritual, you go through a very, you know, you go through a series of different things that just lead up to one thing after another. And, you know, eventually you get to a point where you do become wiser and you know what you're worth, both to other people. And my story is that I just got tired of being a slave to other people in my line of work that were definitely making, you know, were well off in terms of the business that I was bringing them or helping them with. And
Right.
I
You're
wasn't really
making
getting,
them rich, and then you're just getting a salary for it.
essentially, and not even that. But you know, for a lot of people who work in sales and commissions, this is very relatable. And, you know, to have to go through those internal changes, you know, I've met people who have talked about how they've lost friends, and many different things occurred as a result of the chaos that you sort of have to go through a little bit in order for things to just kind of fall into place. And it's weird, right? So I just want to say it's weird because, first of all, I never ever was in a position where I lacked. So even through like a career change, um, unsteady, uncertain waters in terms of like what my financial future was going to bring, my wife actually was very upset at me when I decided to just leave what I was doing and decide to change and shift careers. It was risky, but it did pay off. And the best thing that I did was I listened to my intuition. I really did. It was them. It was the angels of it was definitely Elubatel, and he was guiding me to look at life from a different perspective, in something that I had already enjoyed doing. And today you know, I sit in a career that I love. I don't even consider it a career. You know, I work from home. Um, I make up my own schedule, and the best part is I get to spend time with my family, which is something that I could never do when I was in my previous career. And that to me is everything. I mean, I can't describe to you what level of happiness that brings to me. That is wealth. And I'll do anything for my family. The reason why I did this
Yeah.
book. But in essence, this is, you know, very interesting what you talk about there about being unworthy and having to go through these changes essentially, and you know, of sort of like destroying and then building yourself up back again to being you know, worthy, or essentially to having obtained that knowledge, that understanding about what you need to do and where you need to be. And a lot of it, in order for you to hone in and connect to it, I feel, based on what you said, is, you know, you really have to listen and go inward. And, you know, as you said, finding within you that divine spark and connecting to it. So
Yeah, like that we. I mean, so much of magic and mysticism and all this is that inward journey. But I mean, it's also just it's baked into the system. Like we have the stories of the, you know, the shaman who has to be torn apart and then put back together again. And in some sense or another, if you know, if you're going to walk this path, that's going to happen. And you know, some people it'll be much more intense than others, but that's just part of being a magician. And but yeah, and my own story with wealth magic is kind of similar. I was working a job. I didn't hate the job by any means, but it had its limitations, and I did the completed it the first time, and you know, basically I think what happened was like things just never were quite okay doing what I was doing, and it always seemed like the universe was telling me, hey, you guys need to not be doing this job. You need to go do this other thing. And, you know, and it took a while for it finally just for us to take that leap of faith and be like, okay, I'm going to be a full-time magician now. And, you know, but since it's happened, we've been nothing but blessed. And everything is just, you know, it's like the universe just gets behind you when um, you finally follow that little voice that's in your heart that tells you what you should be doing. And you know, when you do that, and you really are certain that this is it, yeah, everything was just fall into place, and it's gonna give you everything you've ever wanted. You know, and I think that it's important to realize that wealth is not just having a lot of money. It's, you know, having the security. You know, to me, that was the biggest thing, was just the security that money brings. That you're able to take care of a situation if an emergency pops up, and you know, but wealth is and that's like the daily practice that you do before you start the entire working, any of these workings in the wealth magic book, is just to look at something beautiful every day and to see that beauty and recognize, just by seeing that beauty, that you're surrounded by beauty all the time, and that alone makes you wealthy. And I think that the book is really trying to help you redefine wealth to be more than just things, but to be an entire way of life, of, you know, being, you know, in harmony and with yourself and with the world around you.
I agree, and I, you know, I appreciate that you actually expanded on that a little bit, because I think it's really important that people understand wealth magic isn't another version of the magical cash book. It's
Right.
definitely not another version of magical riches. It's not that type of party. And I think that if you know, sort of go into wealth magic with that in mind, you may have a very sad and perhaps rude awakening. Um, to understand and get a perspective of wealth, it's very important that you understand, in essence, what it is you want, and you really need to define that. You know, uh, wealth isn't necessarily having a good job that pays over six figures and you have enough money to do whatever you want. No, because just as easy as it is to have, you know, essentially enough money to do whatever you want, it's real easy for that money to go out and you're not doing anything with it or contributing. And I think that, you know, if you understand wealth from the perspective of people who are wealthy, security means, you know, a good mixture of, you know, having a portfolio essentially, and having a good mixture of assets, real estate, owning securities in, you know, stock markets, in the markets, and in general, having, you know, having money that you can reinvest so that it can make money for you, you know. And very important that you understand what the definition of wealth is. And if you do, if you understand what wealth is, then you have a really, really good shot at doing something really great with this. One of the things that I actually really wanted out of this was to have enough money to be able to help those in need. And this was all about the pact that you're, you know, doing in ritual 2, which, Jareth, I think you suggested that, or you were saying essentially that that sorry, what were you saying again about this in relation to the pact? I forget. Earlier you were talking about, you know, be aware of what you're asking for.
Yeah, well, okay, so let's look at the request that you actually make in the second working in Wealth Magic. And I won't read the whole thing because I don't want any copyright issues or anyone trying to do the ritual just based on that. But it says that, you know, you're asking to be carried through life in a state of limitless wealth. You're calling on the angels to let wealth flow to you and through you. And you're asking them to shift time, bend reality, and lay a path that guides you to live a life of wealth. That is a very intense request, because these angels, as I've tried to illustrate, definitely can shift time, and they can bend reality, and they can change your thoughts, and they can do it. And so you're asking them here to carry you through life in a state of limitless wealth, and to let wealth flow to you and through you. And that's an important part too. You know, this is something that a lot of people miss with money magic, is that you can't hoard your wealth. You've got to let it flow. You've got to spend it too, because giving and receiving are just there's a part of magic. And, you know, the sword and the cup, it all goes together. So yeah, you've got to be ready for what that is. And that's why it's so important that you have a real idea of what wealth is. Because if you go into the second working with the expectation of wealth as being financial, money and goods and things like that, and your life is working at a burger flipper at McDonald's, you're going to have a rough time, because your life is just not set up for that kind of wealth. And so it's going to flip everything upside down and turn your life around, and until you're ready for it. And so yeah, and that's why it's so important to have a very healthy, holistic idea of what wealth is in that way. And then again, but you do need to have your life set up in a way that you can get the money and things like that. It needs to be all of it, and you've got to have the whole thing. You know, that I think that this is the biggest problem that I see with people that do wealth magic, is that, like you said, they approach it like it's magical riches or cash book, where you're just writing a check and then the angels are going to give you the money. And that's not what wealth magic is about. It is about changing your whole life so that it reaches this level where money just flows and good things just flow. And if you're not ready for that, then be ready for a ride, because you're working with an angel that wants to help make you wise at the same time as making you rich. And you know, wisdom's it can be gained through good times, but humans tend to learn better through bad times.
Agreed.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful request, and I love it, and I love it. It shows how powerful that the angels are, and and what they can do for you, and um, it's just really amazing, and it really is such a profound book, uh, and the magic that's in it, and it's just, I mean, it is seriously life-changing magic, and but you need to approach it with that, with respect, and be ready for it, and to be ready to have your life, change. You can't do magic for change and then expect your life to stay the same.
Agreed. Yeah,
And it's like,
it's so funny. You're actually echoing the same words that we said in our last episode, which was, essentially to embrace it.
yeah, yeah, for sure. You've got to be right. And part of being a magician and being on this journey is that, is to learn to be adaptive, and to be, willing to change, and accept change, and working with all of these different, entities to help, just make your life better, and then better for the people around you. And the way most people are living, in today's world, is it's not good for us, and so we can't get stuck in that mentality, and just let's be more open for allowing something better to happen to us.
I really, really appreciate the way that you eloquently described like my entire sentiment. And yeah, Mars said we discussed it in the last meeting. I was kind of like all over the place when describing it, but the way that you mentioned it is perfect, because yeah, you can't work at a regular minimum wage job and expect to get wealthy without going through a crazy amount of life change. So that's why the request, like, I think the important part of even the daily practice, and then even the first ritual, is that it's kind of like setting you up so you don't, like, this is just my opinion, I don't have any facts on it, this is my theory. So the reason that it's the second working and not the first or even the very beginning is because it's so powerful, and it's so uh, like, I guess it gives you 2 months to kind of prepare yourself for the changes that you're about to ask for, because we're talking about making sure we really understand what it is that we're requesting. You're saying that and I agree with you definitely, like the way that it's asking the angels to shift time and bend reality. That's not a small task. It's not like we're not asking for a quarter or 50 cents. I mean, we're asking for the world, because these angels are so powerful. We're asking them to really, really change everything about our particular daily life. And the more things that we have in our life that don't relate to wealth, the more the universe will kind of like strip that away from us. A lot of times that can be painful, and that's where a lot of the disruption, that's where there's a lot of fear around the ritual too. And people, when they hear wealth magic, I've heard a lot of times like they don't want to do it because they heard how bad ritual 2 is, but that's not the right perspective, because if you want wealth, you need to let go of these things that are holding you back from wealth. And most of the time, letting go of those things happen to be very close to a person's life, and having the universe strip that away is very painful, especially like during a very quick period of time. So that's why the disruption can kind of be intense. Like the first time that I did wealth magic, I also did it twice like Mars, but the first time I did it, the disruption was way worse. The second time, it was like a cakewalk, because I think a lot of that disruption, or a lot of that reality bending, was taken care of in the first one. So the second one was just like kind of tying up loose ends and whatnot. And if I were to ever do it a third time, I think it would be even easier, just because the life experiences that I've gained over the past few years has really shifted me towards a real life of wealth. I'm not like a millionaire by any means, but to me, wealth is like, I'm on the path to wealth, and I think that'll always be there. I'll always be on that path. But based on, you even said that this angel Elubatel is all about wisdom. I definitely think I've gotten wise over the last few years. So it's very cool to hear about your perspective on it, and the way that you eloquently described the sentiments that I've been trying to say for a long time, actually.
Yeah, well, yeah, thank you. Well, this has just been a really good talk. I really appreciate you guys letting me come on like this.
Yeah, no worries. I really appreciate you for coming on too. It's actually seriously, it's been an honor. You have a lot of great insight, a lot of wisdom that you can share with viewers and, or I guess listeners, really. So, aside from all these topics, there's one more thing I want to talk about real quick. If we can uh, talk
Well, of
about this
course.
before we close this out. There's particularly, I think somewhere you mentioned that there's a particular reason why the Gallery of Magic shows these three angels. Can you kind of share a little bit about that?
Oh, I think that like I think it just kind of is we've kind of covered it. It was the three that were mentioned at the beginning of the ritual in the um, sixth and seventh book of Moses and the working that's in there for Leviathan. And then in New Avatar Power, he works with Elubatel. But then I think that David Brand added the other two back in, and he's pretty clear. He thinks because it helps ease the disruptions a little bit because um, Atuesuel is his whole area is peace and calm and well-being, and he's kind of like the one to help you become mindful, and peaceful, and Ebuhuel is about health and well-being and growth and nature and things like that. And so I think together they definitely chill each other out a little bit. And I have found that working with them all in one thing is actually the way to go. And instead of, I mean, you can definitely call on just one or two or three or whatever, but if you work with them all together, it really evens the power out. And one of the things that I do and how I make my living is I've created attunements with different spirits. And when I did it with the Angels of Omnipotence, I don't offer it as just one with Elubatel or one with them. It's all together as one because I truly feel that the more that you have, the better they work together, and it creates a more um, holistic approach that covers all the different angles, and as well, and it kind of evens out a lot of that disruptive energy and stuff. And so I think that that's why he brought those other two back in. I think it was a really good idea.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's very important to have an not too crazy of an experience, but also this is only the second working. There's like so many more to come after this. There's four more workings, five more workings actually, up to seven. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
This conversation has been excellent. I really appreciate you once again for coming on board, Mars. Thank you so much for also being on here. Aside from that, if you guys have any finishing thoughts, you can let us know, or we can call it a day.
Yeah, well, I just want to say I'm definitely very blessed to be a part of this, and thank you both, Arjuna, for doing this, and Jareth for taking the time that you take to contribute to the community. The occult community has taken some pretty serious dents, and it's good to know that someone like you is still around, still contributing, and still offering this knowledge. And I think everyone who's listening should definitely give Angels of Omnipotence a shot. It's obviously available on Amazon, and you can buy it hard copy or on Kindle. And I'm actually going to be working with it and applying this in my life because I feel, although I'm sort of done with the whole wealth magic journey in itself, I do believe that there were a lot of really important takeaways and big monumental relationship building components with these spirits every day I am thankful for all that I have, and I always remain humble when I revel in the wonders of power.
Yes, that's very well said. Yeah, I do want to just say a little bit more about the book and what you can do. It's not just a wealth book, but actually, especially when you get into that final angel Atuesuel, it's a lot of inner alchemy and shadow work and shining the light in the darkness inside you, and things like that, so that you can become, you know, more self-aware and start getting rid of a lot of the flaws and the self-sabotaging behaviors and things that can hold you back. So even if you're not interested in money magic at all anymore, there's still a lot that you can get from working with these angels. And yeah, of course, there's everything else that people want when they work with magic, you know, the love magic, and every instance, everything that they do is bringing you know, order out of chaos, but then they can also reduce things back to chaos. Almost every power in the book you can flip, and there's an inverse baneful effect that you can use for, you know, to get justice if you need it. So it's just a really powerful experience working with these angels, and it's definitely been a life changer for me. And I really am excited to share, you know, what I've learned with that, you know, with everybody else. I feel like the world would just be such a better place if people would, you know, would all just take the time to learn and study a little bit more, and to start working with all of these different amazing angels and entities that, you know, we have access to today. It's an amazing time to be alive.
For
Just
sure.
the wealth of information that we have.
Agreed.
Absolutely. So actually, I will be putting your links to both your website, which is shadowbinder.com, and also the link to your book on Amazon, The Angels of Omnipotence. And once again, thank you both for being here, and it's been an amazing experience. So uh, all the viewers, take care, have a good one, have a wonderful, wealthy life, and that's it for today. Thank you.
Peace.
All right, thank you guys.
Bye bye.